Hello, hello.
Welcome.
Welcome, guys. Okay, so we are continuing with our series. This is one of our more relevant in our work recently topics. We're going to be talking this. What episode is this? 62. We're going
62.
right along. Okay, so today we wanted to talk to you guys about birth trauma and some of the things that go into a birthing experience that maybe doesn't go according to plan. Oh,
Yes.
this is
Which it
exciting.
happens. I think it's sad. Like this topic I think is sad because it's like not really talked about. And like
Yeah.
I said same thing when we had, when we talked about pregnancy in general. It's like just this women get pregnant. Ooh, you're pregnant. Women, ooh, you go to the hospital, you're having a baby. It's like hyped up to be this great experience.
Yeah.
Like you have your baby, yay! And it's like nobody's like how was it for you?
Mm-hmm.
You know, girls like actually it want to know really how it was. It sucked.
Yeah. Right.
And it didn't go in your ideal plan of how you expected it to go in your brain and like a healthy, normal, like, yes, this is how I expected my experience to be. It like went south or it was harder or emotionally more draining. Like so many things come with it. So I always just think it's interesting when it's a topic that like I think pregnancy is that one where people are always just like, oh my god, everything's so good and exciting. You should be happy. You should be this. Like, oh, you're in the hospital. Oh my god, oh my god, you birthed your baby.
Mm-hmm.
And then like the aftermath of a woman's like, I'm not going to complain about it because I have my baby.
Right.
And so then it's like I just bottle it up and nobody's like, hey, do you want to know that I was freaking the fuck out and I still have all these things that happen with
Yeah.
my body and brain after that nobody sees.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like it's a sad topic I think when, people are processing it.
Yeah, and I think we all have a tendency, just because it is so sensitive and it's supposed to be so joyous and exciting, that we have a tendency to stray away from anything negatively valenced about pregnancy and birth, right? It's like, let's not manifest these bad, negative, scary vibes about something when in reality, it is a dangerous thing. Just because it happens all the time doesn't mean that it's not safe. I mean, your body is suddenly a new environment and your hormones and your support system changes and your fears change, your anxieties change. Like so many things just go into this and you want it to go perfectly. And what if it doesn't?
Right.
Then you're not prepared. And I think that that's what makes it sort of sad too, is that because we don't wish anyone to have a scary experience or go through a complication or anything like that, we don't even talk about it. Like,
Right.
hey, what if? What if it doesn't go the way you expect it to? Or what if you're delivering early? Or what if there's a complication? Or what if you get sick? Or what if, right? We don't put it out there. So then when it happens, you feel blindsided. And
Yeah.
it's extra scary.
Mhm. Which I think it's like that weird in between. Like one of my clients, like me and her were talking and processing stuff, and I think it's that hard thing. Even when I was processing with her, I'm like, how do we get her to be like not in what if land? Like when you said all those what if, like
Mm.
paranoid, super anxious about them,
Yeah.
but rather curious and gathering information. Like,
Mhm.
no, we don't want you to live in like la la, like, oh my God, what if this happens? And what if I need a C-section? What if, and like work yourself up and make yourself so anxious about the experience? No, that's not what we're trying to get to. But it's like, hey, let me just like say worst case scenario, like, see, how do I feel about a C-section? Can somebody explain what happens? And like, what are my options if that's the case? And like that way, if I go into it and somebody says, "Hey, emergency C-section," I'm like, "Oh, like this sucks," but also I was gathering information this whole time, so I kind of know what to expect, even though it's an emotional thing. So what you said, I think there's a lot of time women are like, now I'm in the middle of a crisis, emergency C-section, or this is what's happening, and it's like I don't really know what that means totally. I'm just like, wasn't expecting this, didn't want to get anxious about this, but now we're here.
Right. And also, too, I think the idea of, well, as long as the baby's healthy, right? That's what matters. And now, what happens if you have a healthy baby, but the whole way that you got that healthy baby was really traumatic and scary? That doesn't just go away because everyone's okay and everything turned out okay in the end? So we tend to gloss over the hard parts. And one of the top things, and as someone who's been postpartum myself, like one of the top things that sucks is that there's so many resources, but you don't know about them until you're in critical need of them most of the time. Like I didn't know that there was all of these different resources for breastfeeding, and that there were groups if you had certain types of anxiety, or, Mother's Helper and Mother's Day Out and this and that and the other. You just don't know
Right.
until, it's not that, yeah, you get a pamphlet, okay, but the doctor's not sitting down with you and saying, like, hey, let's pre-plan ahead of time. Let's sit down together and be like, you're anxious to begin with. You may have a really hard time after you have your baby. You may
Yeah.
experience XYZ. It's hard.
Yeah, and I would say that, I mean, I'm going to just mention a sad reality. I don't think every doctor and every hospital and every healthcare provider is like this, but I do say, in the reality of how healthcare works today, it is like
Hmm.
limited time. I'm here to do my job. And that's why I'm always like, for me personally, and I tell my clients, it's like, do you vibe with your doctor? Like the client I was telling you with, her thing was like, I didn't feel like he cared about me. And I was like, girl, what are we doing?
Yeah.
We're having this person deliver your child, and you're like, I don't know if he really cares about my well being or me
What
even
is
being
that?
alive. But
No.
he's supposed to be a really good doctor.
Hmm.
So I'm going to trust him. And I'm like, that makes my job a lot harder over here because
Sure.
then you have an experience that goes south, and you're like, I guess I'm just going to do what this person says. But like, I don't feel this connection. I don't feel this support. I don't feel this emotional and mental load of like, hey, take a deep breath. Like, we got this. Like, I know it's scary, but like,
Hmm.
we all got you. And there, I think that's like a vibe that can be missing in healthcare because sometimes, you do have, unfortunately, nurses, doctors, people that are just in there to do their job and that aren't like caring or empathetic. And they're just like, well, yep, they know things might be fine, but they're not trained or empathizing to say things out loud. And
Yeah.
to me, I guess doing what we do for a living, I'm like, was there no training? Like, did these nurses not think like, hey, this could be a scary experience, and it's just to them another day in their office, right?
Yeah. And I think too, what makes it hard in like obstetrics and gynecology and just baby doctors in general, there's so much unpredictability about timeline, like when a baby's going to be born, when there's going to be a complication, that on top of that, not getting necessarily the right amount of feedback and time from your providers, you may not even get to have your own provider with you when the time comes to have your baby. Oh well, they're not here, they're not on call tonight, they're on vacation. This is the one moment that I need you.
Right.
I want you. This is the person who's been following me. And I mean, it's a scary thing to not
Mm-hmm.
have your one same face that you've had the
Right.
whole time through your whole experience, guiding you through it and holding your hand and being there for you. And then when the time comes to have your kid or kids or whatever, it's like, oh well, they're not here.
Right.
What do you mean? Like
Right.
this
And
is
now,
the one time I want you here. What do you mean?
like nobody's a safe place. So you're like, okay.
Oh
Now
my
I'm just in
God.
here with
Like,
I'm just in here with strangers. Like I just got nauseous thinking about it. Like, hey, one of the biggest days of my life.
mm-hmm.
Here's my whole body.
Right. You know nothing about me, but like, let's do this thing.
You know nothing about me, but I have to put all my trust into you and this like supposed to be like the most exciting, terrifying moment of my life. And then if things go south, it's like that's great if you have a good experience, but if you don't, if it's like, okay, something's not right or something else needs to happen, it's like a freak out little moment. And then I'm with strangers who don't feel safe to me.
Right. Now, I think when it's important to talk about like what exactly birth trauma is, because I do think that for people who haven't had a rough birth experience or pregnancy, I think there's this misconception that if you haven't basically almost died, it's
Right.
not birth trauma, right? And it's not a traumatic experience. And this is the one place that I'm really going to say it's okay to be a little bit more generous because it is such a vulnerable time. To me, like when I hear someone say that they've had a difficult birthing experience and they can explain it, there's a lot of ways that you can view it as traumatic. I think there's things like poor pain management. There's things like being dismissed and ignored by nurses. Not, you're told, oh, your body's doing X, but you're like, no, my body's doing Y. I know my body. And they're like, yeah, no. Emergency C-sections, right? Medical complications with the baby, emergency situations like early delivery, like all of these things are traumatic. And whether they are the big T traumatic or the little T traumatic, it's not what you expected, and it is a loss of control that I think your body doesn't experience in another way.
Right.
This is such a vulnerable time, and it's like it's not just your life on the line, but it's your child's. So there
Right.
is that extra element of like, I can only do so much here, and I have to put a lot of faith in my team and my decision making here. So it's scary.
Yeah, well, that just already made me sick. Like you said that, and when and me and my doctor actually just had this conversation because we were talking about like health scares and like what you would do, like
Hmm.
going on with me, and I was like, "Are you concerned? Should I be concerned?" And like we were goofing off. She goes, "Well, Leslie, it just depends on how like
Yeah.
risk aversion you are. Like if you're kind of like not freaking out about it, like I'm not really worried about it. But if you were that person that was super anxious, I'd be like, well, let's just find out just in case." And then I go, yeah, I do. And she said, because she has two kids, and she was like, no, the only time that comes into play differently is when it's my kids. And I was like, valid, because I do think what you just said is a huge thing because you're not just like, oh, I'm not okay.
Right.
You're like, I carried this baby for 9 months. Like have already this attachment. This is the life I'm bringing to the world. This is everything's already attached and formed. And you're like, this is the moment. And so your brain's like now wired, like you're not thinking about you, right? You're like, obviously we want mom to be healthy, safe, and okay. But like, you're like, is my baby okay? Right.
Right.
So that for a mother becomes like this huge thing that
Yeah.
you don't have to just be like, oh, I'm going into procedure and I'm worried and anxious for me because it's scary.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think that it is a really complicated thing to explain when you're in the thick of it and things are not going at all according to plan, because now you can't even think just about yourself. You have to think about, okay, every choice that I make moving forward is going to impact not just me and my health and my recovery, but my child too, and what that looks like for us. And there's a lot of pressure to make the right decisions,
Right.
you know? Um, and then you introduce things like, well, when your baby's born early, for example, you're not ready for it. Then what happens? Well, now you have different decisions to make because now it's more medical. And now it's not just, okay, well, this is part of my journey, right? We're getting to the finish line. Oh, well, the finish line is moved up. We got bumped up, and now there's extra choices to make. And it's stressful, and other things change, you know? Um, so you need support, and if you don't have the right kind of support, it takes a long time to really get over it. And you don't really, I mean, you don't really.
Right.
What tends to happen though sometimes, and we see this a lot with mothers that have had a traumatic, especially first birthing experience, they hope that their second birthing experience will be healing, right? Well, I had another baby, even though my first pregnancy and delivery sucked, because I wanted this to be my like redemption story. I wanted to feel normal this time. And then what if that doesn't happen? You know, so there's so much uncertainty in
Right.
every experience, and every birth is different. Every pregnancy is different,
Right.
even if it's the same person.
Right. Or I think the opposite can happen too, right? Because every person's different. Like some women are like, I want to have the redemption baby, and other women are like, I really want another baby, but now fear is driving them because it's like,
Absolutely. Yep.
I don't want to go through that again, so maybe I'm only going to have one. And like, there's a sadness in that too when I hear my clients, because I can tell like this isn't actually what they want. Like,
Yeah.
their soul is like, I want to have another one, like so bad. But that anxiety of like living in that trauma state again is just so big that it's like, oh, maybe, and they're convincing themselves they don't. And I'm like, that's okay if like, that is okay if you're genuinely like, you know what, I don't want to go through it again. I'm good with one.
Right.
But there's a lot of verbiage like I can like scope out where I'm like, that's not really your soul talking, where you're like, you know what, I'm totally good. It's like this fear, trauma driven response that's playing out that's like going to convince you and talk you out of what you really want because it was so scary. And I'm like,
Yeah.
which I do, even doing what we do for a living, it's like that's our job, right? Helping people work on that so they don't follow the fear response and being like, well, just we have to work through some of that birthing trauma and follow what you really want. And we will be as prepared as we can, know how to deal with your emotions when they come up, what's going to trigger you, like what we might need when you're triggered. There's like so many things that you can prepare for.
Yeah.
as much as you can, even if you're like, in case it happens again, I kind of have some tools to better be equipped.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's interesting too because I think there's also a lot of defensiveness that comes up with choices about how many children you have and if you're going to have more and what I had a friend that was very adamant. She had one child and she was like dying on the hill that everybody should only have one kid. And, it kind of got to a point where I asked her, why is this so important to you? It's a little bit hurtful to people who have more than one kid. You're kind of making everyone feel a little discomfort. And for her, she just never disclosed to people how traumatic her first and only birthing experience was with her son. And, it was very vulnerable of her to finally talk about it. But
Yeah.
she was defensive about that because she had made the decision for herself that, well, I don't want any more kids and no one has to know why. But, you also have to be able to express your feelings and be vulnerable, Like, I have three. I don't want four because my second birth was so
Yeah.
like it almost unalived me, right? So for
Right.
me, I tell people that, like, yeah, at a point in my life, I wanted more than three children, that time has passed for many reasons, but also, like, I don't want to leave my three kids without a mom for the sake of having a fourth because of how dangerous it was, and
Right.
I feel like that's okay, but I had to make peace with talking about it.
Right.
And it's hard for many women to get there. Like, well, I'm going to admit that I don't want a second kid because I was throwing up every single day of my first pregnancy and it almost killed me, you
And
know?
and like, and I think that's a hard line of which only you're gonna know as the individual. Anybody else can be like, "Are you sure it's not because you're scared?" Like learning how to sit and like just process your birthing experience. That's why I always say like
Yeah.
at least processing the traumatic experience and being like, after I process it fully, now what? Is that something like that risk aversion thing that comes in? Like,
Yeah.
do I want one bad enough where like I'm willing to put myself in that situation and see what happens? And some people are like what you just said, like, no, like I don't want something bad enough. Like I'm good where I am. And that's perfectly fine. And some people are like, I really want it and I'm gonna think about it forever if I don't try, or it's gonna like consume me just to so it's and I don't think that's an easy thing to figure out.
No. No, it's not. And, part of, I think, the birth trauma experience is so all these heavy emotions, like you take into consideration the anxiety, the depression that can come with the hormones, the rage, which is so real, very under talked about. Let's just talk,
Very. Yeah.
very much that I think that's the number one thing that many women don't expect to happen. Like, hey, I have this beautiful new life and I'm so happy, but I'm horrifically angry and irate at everyone all the time. Why? Well, it happens.
Right.
You have to be ready that maybe that's not you and it feels like you're disconnected from this experience of joy and it feels so bizarre and like out of who you are.
Right.
But now there's also guilt about, well, my birth plan didn't go the way that I wanted to. I didn't do certain things the way that I wanted to. I couldn't do certain things the way that I wanted to because my baby was too small. My baby has a medical issue, this, that, or the other. I didn't advocate for myself, and or I over advocated for certain things that actually didn't matter, and now I feel silly about them. But there's no right way. There's
Right.
really no right way to ask for what you want, and it's important to be able to say, these are the things that are important to me, but should things go south, I'm prepared to accept that it may have to be different.
Right.
I mean, I can speak to that myself, that neither one of my births went the way that I expected them to.
Yeah.
And I was praying, hoping, living on a prayer that my second one was going to be that redemption story.
Yeah.
And it was not at
Yeah.
all. So, I have nothing but empathy and compassion for people who go through that. Um, and you know what? Even personally, I can say I felt a little envious of people who've had zero
Yeah.
complications and sailed
Absolutely.
through it, because that's a vision that I had for myself.
Right.
And that's
Absolutely.
okay to feel that way.
And like, yeah, I love that you said that because I think that's such a normal thing when I hear women like, yeah, Alessia, this was my experience, but then my friends are like loving being pregnant, can't wait to have another baby, and then they have like their great experience, and it's like one of my clients the other day was like, well, fuck me, like why? And you do have that victim mentality for a second. That's like, I had one or two experiences that were fucking demon hell.
Hmm.
And my friends over here, like, really? I was like chilling, back to working out 3 days later. And you're like,
Not
and I
me.
think that's the sad reality of everything pregnant and birthing. I think is so interesting how the brain and body is because it's just like we say, like, it impacts everybody individually and differently. And you never know what your experience is going to be.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's true. I mean, even like I had two very traumatic births, but I loved being pregnant. And I know people that had easy births where it was no big deal, no complications, but they hated every last second
Yeah.
of being pregnant. You
Yeah.
know, and would they do it again because their birth was so easy? Some would, some won't. You know,
Yeah.
and for me, I tell people all the time, I would, if things were different in my life and it weren't risky, I would love to be pregnant. Like I loved
You
it.
always said that. You're always like, I'm having a blast. Like, I miss being pregnant.
Loved it. Yeah, you know, but my births were very difficult. And that to me is not something that I could do again,
Yeah.
you know? So I think it's important to, like, that is okay to
Hmm.
feel a little bit robbed sometimes, you know? Um, and see what things about your experience were most difficult. You know, something we were chatting about briefly before we hopped on here too. There's so many factors about like the way that you internalize your experience too, and some of the fears that come with prior experiences in pregnancy. Like if you've had a loss before, you don't
Right.
really enjoy your pregnancy the same way because you have fear now of
Mhm.
what's going to go wrong. Is this going to last? Is this one going
Right.
to take? You know, um, and I've been there too. You know, the
Yeah.
first. So you know, we talked about it even at the beginning of that pregnancy that I had. You know,
Mhm.
you don't feel it the same way because you feel like I'm robbed of that joy because just happened to me. You know, and what if it
I
happens
think
again?
there's that like, how do I verbalize in therapy terms? 'Cause I try to normalize it where I'm like, okay, we can't live in the anxiety of the trauma experience, but the reality is, sadly, it's always something you're battling lightly in the background, right? So it's like, how do we help a client be like, hey, 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 we have to like not be a negative world and in a trauma state, but like one of my clients, I fucking love her and she has 4 children. But like I went through two back to back miscarriages with her and she was far along and they both happened around the same time. So even me as her therapist, like luckily she had the two she had was after that, so she has had like healthy babies after that, but I remember like when she got pregnant after those two losses, even me as a therapist, I was like
Anxious.
treading lightly on even how I showed up for her because I'm like, okay, are we gonna hit 3, 4 months and something's gonna go south again, right? Because like we were prepared for it, and then the second one happened, and it's like once trauma happens again, you're like your body's like, oh, so like it was hard, and it was hard to be like, well, like what you said, or the whole time she's like, I'm trying to stay positive, but my body is also like, hey, week by week, well, we got this far last time, we got this far last time, we got this. And then like once the day passed, there was a like a relief, but then it was like, well, it still could happen because it's happened before. It's like I hate it because I think it's the sadness of, like you said, it's like your experience has totally changed, and as much as you're gonna work on it while you're in it, it is there, and it's always there, lingering because you're not really free of like, yeah, let me just not think about it. Your body's not
Right.
letting you do that.
Yeah.
It's not going
Yeah.
to.
And you know what? Also, I actually today I had a conversation with a friend, and this topic came up because she did have a later loss than I did, and she described her losing that pregnancy like she had to give birth to that baby, and it was late along. And so for her, like that is a birth experience, where for
Absolutely.
miscarriage is not for some, they don't feel that it's a birth like because it wasn't to term or it wasn't viable or whatever it is. And it struck me so powerfully just talking to her at least a couple hours ago, because that is a birth experience for her, and
Yeah.
she remembers it so vividly that when, you think about that, and she was even saying like, I've had this experience too. When you find out you're pregnant, you're doing the math. Okay, when is my baby going to be born?
Yeah.
And then if you lose a pregnancy, when that day comes, it's like,
Hmm.
well, this would have been the day. And it's
Yeah.
so hard
Yeah.
to just wrap your mind around that.
That's a
Um,
whole like trauma of the grief around that too. Like one of my clients, I think I told you, like, oh, God love her too. She had like she had to get a medical abortion because the baby was just, they were like, if you go to full term, the baby's not going to live anyway. Like, so they're like, it's better to do now when you're at 3 or 4 months or whatever. But like the day comes and she's like, it was the 1 year. And it was like still a year later. It's still like, well, yep, this is what happened. And I had to grieve this whole life I was imagining. And,
yeah,
it's like just, it's such a sad thing. And like what we said at the beginning, women don't talk about this. It's
no,
because I think a lot of women that come to me to talk about it, I'm like, this is crazy that like even me, I'm very well trained to process this with people. I haven't had children, but I'm like, that's crazy that you're telling me and I'm relating to you because I'm a woman and I'm like empathizing. But like no other woman, and I have 7 other people this week that have talked about the same thing with me, but you guys aren't talking to each other.
yeah.
And I think that's sad because it's like this, like, who do you talk to about it? And really feel like people get it and really feel like a woman's going to get it. I'm like, well, there's plenty of people, but like, you keep it to yourself, which is so sad.
Yeah, and I think there's an element to just pregnancy and birth and loss and all of that that still feels protected and private.
Yeah.
Like, I know the dates of every positive pregnancy test that I had. I know the dates of, everything.
Yeah.
And I think that part of that, I like that I'm the only one that has that, and I know all of those things. But it's also very lonely when you think about, like, I know when Sunday was supposed to be born, right? And I know when the twins are supposed to be born and what their actual birthdays were, and I know when my little angel baby was supposed to be born, all of that. But I know that. And
Right.
sometimes it's lonely. One of my best friends lost a baby within a month of when I did, and she had her baby with Sunday, like it was a month apart, right? So she and I will text each other like, "Hey, happy birthday to our baby,"
Yeah.
because we went through that together, but like nobody else knows that. And
Right.
sometimes it's really lonely, and it feels weird to be like, "Hey, I'm having a hard day because," right? Even though I know that like I have so many people and I know that this is not an experience that's unique to me, which makes me so sad, because it's lonely. And
Right.
the whole process is lonely too, even when like you find out you're pregnant and you don't want to tell anybody. So
Right.
you're kind of pretending and you're in this little secret because you're keeping it safe. So all of those things are really hard,
Yeah.
and every part of it is hard. I mean, and like your birth experience doesn't end with having your baby. It's about, well, I wanted to breastfeed, but I can't, or I choose
Right.
not to, or it was hard, or I have to fight for this because my baby's struggling, or my baby was born early and they can't do it. Like it's very isolating and
Like we could do a
hard.
whole other episode on just that kind of stuff of women talking about like what you expect as a new mother, and then when the doctor's like, no, you can't.
Mhm.
Actually, with the stuff your baby's going on, you like breastfeeding's a huge. We could do a whole just
Oh my
breastfeeding
God.
freaking topic
Yeah.
because women will just struggle in like that connection piece. And then when people have to stop breastfeeding, like it's just there's just so many things that
Yeah.
moms don't talk about.
Yeah. And I
Maybe,
mean,
maybe we need a mini mom series.
but, I think that this topic specifically, there's so much, and I mean, we could talk about this forever. I could talk about this forever, but it's something that
Yeah.
so many women go through. You should feel like you can turn to someone. If you have a therapist and you're struggling with anything mom related, bring up your birth experience because it's relevant, and how you connect
Yeah.
with your child, how you view your motherhood, the support that you had, I mean, it starts there. And if you
Right.
start your postpartum period and your birth period alone, it dictates a lot of how your motherhood's going to feel,
Right.
you know. And I can tell you that not having support in birth, in postpartum, robs you also of a lot of that initial joy. And it feels very sad and scary because you're doing it alone, you're figuring it out alone, and that bliss is kind of a blur. So that too.
Right. I think you touched upon it because it's like, and I want to hear from you before we end of if somebody's had a traumatic birthing experience, like, and either they want to have another baby or they want to process it. Like some
Yeah.
tips, tools, tricks. Like I always say, like what main one you said is support. Like we were talking earlier about. A lot of times I'll do like redos with my client. Like okay, like that definitely didn't go how we ideally planned. So if you could take two, what do you think? Even if it was still a traumatic experience, like what would you have wanted differently? And most of the time, I hear more empathetic doctors and empathetic. I want the space to be different. I want the people there to like explain more. I wish I would have had more education. I wish I would have been more informed of. So it's like, okay, well now we're gonna what are our options next? So we can go in a little more prepared so you're not your body's kind of you're fighting your nervous system at that point, right? So I can go in like, cool, I picked a doctor that I really like vibe with this time. I really trust them. My friends have had them. Like I've heard one of my clients, she said that. She's like, my best friend had this person, so now I feel like they told me like they felt safe, who you're in there with, liking the nurses, liking the space you're in, and being educated and advocating for yourself. I think you had mentioned that earlier, and I've heard that so many times that women are like, I wish I would have advocated because something didn't feel right, or I wanted this, but I didn't say anything because we get in that those little voices of like, these are the doctors, and I'm just supposed to trust them and do what they say. And it's like, take your power. And I'm going to say this if you have a partner, right, like a healthy partner that's there with you, like help them advocate with you for you so you have that extra support. But I do think support is a huge thing through all of it because
Yeah.
it's hard. So, what about you? What other tips, tools, tricks would you give to people?
I think learn how to be comfortable accepting and incorporating your difficult birth into who you are. It's something that I think we put a lot of distance and shame and detachment into because it feels like not what you expected it to be. Talk about it. Don't hide it for just yourself to deal with because it will rear its ugly head. And then, I think more than anything, yeah, you need the support, but in postpartum, do the best that you can to bond with your baby and also see who you are now as a mom, because when your vision of birth changes, your vision of who you are as a mom changes. If you wanted to have this perfectly peaceful experience and you view yourself as this peaceful, tranquil, happy mom, with no struggles, now that's kind of out the window. So who am I now? Like everything went south and I'm just lost.
Yeah.
I don't know like what I'm doing and I don't know my expectation of myself is now very different. I think just kind of meeting yourself where you are, hey, that really sucked and it wasn't what I wanted and it wasn't what I expected, but we're here,
Right.
and where do I go from here in a healthy way without holding on to that as a failure,
Yeah.
which is, I failed because it didn't go the way I wanted to. Most vulnerable thing a woman will go through. And that's a very difficult place to recover from if you label your experience as a failure.
Mm-hmm.
Well, now that's not what I thought it was going to be. So now your motherhood looks different.
Right.
Um, and, I don't know. To me, that is just so important where you have to kind of let go of the vision that you had because it's going to be different. I mean, there's no part of parenting and motherhood and any of that that's predictable.
Right.
So, like reconcile with yourself,
Yep.
get support, and be honest when you feel like you're overwhelmed and you're drowning.
Right. Don't try to do it all alone.
No, because it's hard.
Well, yeah.
Either,
We're gonna end this now because we could go on a tangent
yeah. But
about
we would love, as always, to hear from you guys. If any of this resonated with you, if it brought something up for you that you went through. We're always happy to support you, hear you out, and if you ever feel comfortable with us sharing stories, we would love to do that, answer questions, and just be there for you. So, thanks for listening. Hope this hit home for someone, and you're not alone.
You're not alone. We all have stuff. Birthing
Yes,
stuff.
guys.
Till next time, squad.
Love you. Bye.